Fourth set of the day will be played on Newkirk, spawning in the bottom right-hand position as the, sorry, bottom left-hand position. They always freaking fool me on this map, man.
Well, it looks similar left and right.
It like is pretty much mirrored. Anyway, Fantasy spawning in the bottom left-hand corner as the Red Terran.
His opponent already up to 2 kills. He could go for the 3rd kill and the all kill. However, he needs to take out Fantasy first. His name is Deer, spawning as a blue Protoss on the right bottom position, playing for STX Seoul.
You're right, if Deer is able to get a kill here, he'll be looking very solid for the all kill. He'll have to take out Parting or Rain in the last match here, but you know what? Both of those players are very good in PvP, but we clearly saw from Deer's match against Brown that, you know, he can tango when it comes to PvP.
Oh, yeah. So just talking about the SAS, Fantasy is 6-6 when it comes to this particular matchup, but he does have the 2-0 lead against his opponent Deer, 1-0 in StarCraft 2. Deer, we haven't seen that many PBT from him so far, only 2 matches, and he is 1-1.
You know, and also we haven't really seen too much Heart of the Swarm PBT from Fantasy as well. You know, his very harassment-orientated style from Brood War can transfer over quite well the Terran in StarCraft 2, with using the Medivacs, using the Hellbats, the Hellions, dropping the Bio, using the Mines. All of the tools are here for Fantasy to use.
Oh yeah, definitely, and we're going to see how he decides to play out in this match. Remember, when we were talking about how Cure was not doing so great in the TvP matchup, as soon as we said that, he went for a hyper-aggressive multitasking build, heavy multitasking build, which worked out well for him, put him in a nice advantage, and eventually won the game. So it really depends on how Fantasy wants to play today. Does he want to play hyper-aggressive, or does he want to play like a standard Terran on this map?
That's true, and we've also noticed that if you open up with Terran doing an aggressive build against Protoss, and you are pretty effective early on, it just really starts the snowball for the Terran player, and it makes it almost impossible for the Protoss to win. And already we're having a Reaper opening from Fantasy here, so he's going to start off with a little bit of aggression. And the interesting thing here, the note, is we're not seeing any Zealot being made from Deer at all. He's just going to wait for that core and then go ahead and make that Stalker.
Alright, so there we go. Reactor Expand coming out from Fantasy. Standard opening by him, his opponent Deer. Still a standard opening. This map plays out normally, I have to say, compared to some of the other maps out there. So we're not going to see a huge deviation of builds on this map. Sometimes players like to go for the proxy, but usually the standard, you know, Reactor Expand versus the Stalker Expand.
Alright, this Reaper moving into the main base, and the Mothership Core completing at the perfect time there. That Stalker going to chase away that Reaper. We still have this SCV here that is just waiting for that expansion to get built, but
we have a sentry before the Nexus.
Looks like Deer wants to be very safe here.
And I also saw that he was getting 3 probes on each geyser, which is something that you normally do not see when it comes to PvT early opening. It seems like he wants to get a faster tech out.
He is going to go ahead and put down that expansion, but the Reaper will get into the main base. It scouts everything, and looks like it will be able to get away there. Force Field attempts to go down, but that Reaper will just barely survive there with just a few health left.
Waste of 50 energy.
Also, he can't use that Sentry the Scout later on, and this Mothership Core, the Marines are going to chase it away here, and that won't be able to do much.
Just pokes in and sees that there's nothing on the right side of his own Fantasy space, and behind this, Deer is getting a Robo.
Getting a Robo and a Gateway as well, so not going to see that Stargate tech, most likely this game. Generally, if you're going to go for the Stargate, you're going to get it early on in the game against a Terran player and try to abuse the lack of Marine count. But look at this, Fantasy. He's getting a very fast +1 attack here with his Engineering Bay. So just to make sure he's safe against any potential Oracle play, and to also buff his ground units early on in the game.
And to counter that, his opponent Deer is getting a fast forge around 6 minutes. You don't get a double. Some players decide to go for a double forge, but most players get a single forge and then try to get different tech out, such as Colossus or Blink.
It's true, and this Reaper going to move in again to try to do a little bit more scouting here.
Uh-oh.
And looks like pretty much everything is going to be revealed to Fantasy here. We have another sentry there, and the Forge scouted. That's going to be big. This Reaper also going to scout the Robo. Fantasy seeing everything with a fantastic scout here.
Nice map hack.
Pretty much, man, except they didn't use scan.
Didn't use scan or the actual map hack in this game. And Fantasy, he must be feeling so comfortable right now. He knows that there's not going to be any proxy Stargate play. He saw the Robo, he saw the Forge inside the main base. The +1 is much earlier than his opponent's +1 armor, so Fantasy can do anything that he wants to do right now, as long as he doesn't botch the main engagement or the drop harassments.
It's true. I would expect some drop harassment from Fantasy this game here. You know, even though Deary is a very solid player, he probably can deal with the drop harassment pretty well. The Observer is scouted, so we're going to see a Scando go down as soon as these Marines get in the proper position, but it looks like they just can't quite get it, and the Observer will escape for now.
Sneaky little Observer. Just gets out of there just in time. Also scouts what Fantasy has right now. Factory and a Starport did not see a third command center inside the main base, so he knows that Fantasy is not looking to expand anytime soon.
Yeah, everything looking pretty much very straightforward from both players here. We are seeing overall, Fantasy is just scouting a little bit for the proxy pylons. Pretty smart play by him. No reason why he shouldn't do that. And, you know, just getting a starport, very standard things here. Everything is essentially revealed to both players as well.
But usually, Protoss players, they get to see what the Terran player has with the single Observer before it gets taken out. Terran players, they have to waste a scan. And it was just a little better victory for Fantasy, I have to say, because he used a single Reaper to see everything.
It's true. He does get a nice snipe on that Observer there. Second Forge on the way here to start the double Forge upgrades. We already have +1 armor finished up here for Deer, and he's getting that +2, of course, that +1 as well. Grabbing Charge, not going for the Colossus tech this game, instead opting for the Templar Archives, and he's got a lot of Observers on the map, man. I love his Observer placement.
He doesn't want to get dropped a single bit without noticing the metabacks, and now Fantasy is moving out on the map, but Deer doesn't see it.
Ooh, actually, okay, he will spot it
Well, now he sees it.
This is actually a pretty impressive force of Marines here. His +1 armor and combat shields are going to finish up very soon here. With the sentry count, it's going to make it hard for this attack to actually go up the main ramp. Looks like Fantasy wants to just make sure that the third base does not go up by any means, and making an Archon here, it looks like. Wants to make sure that he's safe against this timing from Fantasy.
Yeah, but if you think about it from Fantasy's perspective, if he doesn't actually engage into this, then he just forces an Archon instead of going for the High Templars and storms right away. So, little victory once again, but let's see Fantasy. He wants to go for the attack. Can he actually do a lot of damage? That's not the great position, but didn't get force fielded in.
I think he's very afraid of those force fields here. He could have made this attack work. I feel like the DPS is there. Fantasy actually wasted a huge stim in that timing here, and now the +2 attack, or sorry, +1 attack, +2 armor. It's going to finish any second here. Fantasy needs to make something happen if he wants to continue to be aggressive. Getting a third behind this though, so it looks like not going to go ahead and commit to this attack here, or is he? He's playing with fire right now, man.
He's playing with fire, and he's only going to commit to it if he knows that he's going to win the engagement 100%. If there's no guarantee, then all he's going to do is poke in, poke out, force his opponent to get a lot of Gateway Army out, try to get some of the gas units out, and force his opponent to stay in 2 base, but it seems like Fantasy is saying, well, that is too much, and I don't know if the storms are done or not, so there's no reason for me to risk it at this point.
The storm's about to finish here. Deer and potentially very strong timing here. We'll look at this though. Hellbat's on the way for Fantasy here. He needs somewhere to deal with these Zealots, and that would be the best way to do it here. Also, we do need to see Ghost Tech on the way as well here. Otherwise, the High Templar and the Archons are going to do too much damage. Storm is complete here, so you know, Fantasy, unless he is perfect with his micro, it's not going to work out for him in this fight.
Oh yeah, and leading the army with the 2 High Templars. Those are out of range from the storms, right? He needs a stem. Make sure those storms do not go off on the main army.
Storm connecting with a few units there, getting okay surface area. And we are seeing the Ghost Academy finally go up here, and a second engineering bay, so smart decisions from Fantasy here. We are seeing the +2 attack on the way now for Deer, as Fantasy is about to finish. And a nice snipe by Fantasy there, getting that Archon. And we do have some storms in this army, but oh, nice, forcing the High Templar into that Archon there. Now Fantasy can use his superior DPS and micro, snipes off that Archon, is going to do his best to micro back. The force field's not so good. And Fantasy really just showing some impressive micro here against Deer.
And this is only with the pure Bio Ball. If he actually had the Hellbats in this main composition along with the Ghost, then he would have won the engagement right away, and that's what he's going to go for now. He does have the reinforcements coming in. The High Templars are out once again, but Fantasy showing superior micro in this, except for that one engagement.
Yeah, losing a few units there, but forcing the Storms before the main engagement, and the Hellbats adding into the army now. These Zealots are going to crumble to the Hellbats, and they're forced to retreat now. It looks like Deer, his army composition now inferior to Fantasy's.
And the next cannon does go down. However, that's a lot of bio units, and we don't have any AoE damage unit from our Protoss player. Not just yet. The 2 High Templars are getting warped in, but we still have to wait around 25 seconds before they can get the storms out.
No Colossus just yet for Deer as well. Fantasy actually floating a lot of resources here, up to 1,300. And look at this, though. He's going to move into the main base. And these units do spot it, but I think this drop is going to end up doing a lot of damage here with the Hellbats and main Bioforce inside. We're seeing Deer retreat with his army here with a good amount, but I'm not sure if that's going to be enough against this.
That is not... Well, he does have the upgrades, and Fantasy is kiting. There's a lot of Zealots and not that many Hellbats with the drop, so Fantasy is forced to pull back.
Oh, excellent Storm on that army there, doing a lot of damage. That second Storm also connecting quite well here. It looks like Fantasy, he's going to have to back up with this aggression for now.
And this is not a bad situation for Deer either, because Fantasy went for the drop. He didn't kill that many probes with the initial drop. The second drop is already spotted with the Zealots being in position, and he's been having these little victories when it comes to the battles, but he didn't cripple his opponent's economy at all in all these drops.
I would actually like to see Fantasy go ahead and take another expansion right now and continue working on his army composition.
This is a really strong army composition from Deer.
He's gonna have to force Fantasy to make a few Vikings here. And it looks like some Zealots are gonna run into the main base here. There are a couple of Marines which will be able to eventually take those out, though, but we will see a few SCVs go down to these Zealots. Another thing to point out, the upgrade advantage for Deer right now, very impressive, and we need to see Fantasy do something about that.
Oh yeah, and Deer, as long as he buys enough time to get the unit composition that he wants and defense against those medevac drops, he could slowly push out on the map now. He got the unit composition, 2 Colossus, 5 High Templars.
The High Templar moving in. That does a feedback on one of the medevacs, but these probes over here, we may see a little bit of damage done to them, but no, Fantasy deciding to lift up. He's going to move into the main base instead while staying very active and mobile on the map. I like that Fantasy is really trying to do this map control here, but I feel like eventually Deer is going to max out, and this is when he's going to move out with his main army comp.
And that's the problem. That's going to be a huge problem for Fantasy, because this is looking really scary.
It is. We don't have any Vikings yet. We have 3 Vikings now, 4 in production though. Also grabbing 2 command centers, getting that +1 air attack and +3 armor on his bio. Over time, I feel like Fantasy will start to stabilize into a better, more efficient army composition. And drops over here, not really doing too much. Deer getting ready to move across the map, however.
Yeah, if Fantasy has the Vikings out in time, then it's going to be a battle between the High Templars and the Ghosts.
Certainly is here, and this drop being very annoying to Deer. He is gonna, looks like he wants to force the engagement. Fantasy needs to buy a little bit more time for those Vikings. He's got 7, but he wants to have a few more to deal with these 3 Colossi.
The Ghosts are in the front and uncovered. High Templar going towards the back. Nice time up on all of those Ghosts!
The Ghosts are getting completely shredded here, and the Storms are gonna move in. Great Storms on Fantasy's army here, but is it enough? It doesn't look like it. Fantasy is still managing to push back his opponent and having a supply advantage. The running High Templar will get sniped off here, and it looks like that 1 Colossus will eventually fall as well to that Viking.
He could have gone for it if he wanted to, but he was too scared of the Hellbats. That was in the main army composition, and since he only has Zealous left, he didn't want to risk it. But really nice engagement by Deer, nullifying every single one of those ghosts before the main battle happened. If it wasn't for that, he would have actually lost the game right now.
Yeah, to feel the same way here. Fantasy moving in with a lot of Hellbats and these medevacs towards that main base here. Also moving across the map with the main bulk of his army. And now Deer is the one that has a really inferior army composition. No probes really left in the main base, so would like to see Fantasy try to drop another location. These Hellbats are going to be very annoying, though. They're quite sturdy as well, so really there's going to be a commitment from the Protoss player needed to stop these.
Well, that was a distraction. Fantasy actually wanted Deer to pull all of his main army back into the main base once again, just like he did 2 previous times. However, he needs to make sure he doesn't lose the Colossus.
It's true. These Marauders and Hellbats just being very annoying in the main base here. And now Deer deciding to move across the map again. The Colossus taken out, though, and this drop needs to be dealt with. Great EMPs on the main bulk of the army. That Storm doing a good amount of damage to those Vikings, but not taking any of them out quite yet.
Oh yeah, definitely, and so annoying inside the main base trying to deal against these drops. And all Fantasy has to do is use his superior micro and get those out of the way.
Yeah, so we have an annoying medevac in the corner between those bases there. Fantasy and Deer both securing their 4th bases at this point here. It looks like Fantasy, he does have the maxed out army. I would like to see him try to trade a little bit more efficiently here and just keep that army from getting too powerful on Deer's side.
And also remember, all of those Colossus are getting picked off one by one, so even if Deer wants to push out, he needs to wait for the second and the third Colossus
getting picked out. That Colossus is going to go down. We also have a few good EMPs going down. Fantasy moving in here. The Vikings, though, over the main army, they may get taken out as well. We have a good surround from Deer here, but will it be enough? It looks like the EMPs are good. No storms in sight here. It's just a clear sunny day for Fantasy as he moves in and gets ready to take out Deer.
Seems like that's going to be it. Deer loses the 3rd base. He only has Stalkers against these Bio Army, and Deer has no answer. GG!
Fantasy with some excellent control and micro. I have to say the micro from Fantasy won him this game.
I have to say his macro wasn't fantastic, floating 1K even if he wasn't maxed out around 13 minutes, 14 minutes into the game. However, it didn't matter because his micro saves the day.
That's true.
For SK Telecom T1.
So Deer, his chances of an all-kill have been effectively stopped by Fantasy here. Currently the score, it's going to be 2-2 now between STX Seoul and SK Telecom T1, who will be sent out